Simplicity can be extremely powerful. Of course, there's a place for the more intellectual and philosophical entries in the canon of horror cinema, but some of the best examples of the genre are purely exercises in the visceral. I mean that in the sense that they can be base and emotional and literally focused on the body. And there's perhaps no film as powerfully callous with its characters, so willing to turn people into mere objects and even meat, than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In the early 1970s, inspired by tales of the bizarre crimes of Ed Gein told to him by his relatives from Wisconsin, as well as the increasingly graphic depiction of crime and death on the local news, Tobe Hooper had a strange idea. At the height of the boiling Texas summer, he enlisted a group of mostly local and only semi-professional actors to create one of the most dizzying descents into violent madness to ever grace the silver screen. A film that might be the best horror film ever made. Maybe. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre follows two siblings, Sally and Franklin, who, along with their friends, go to visit their grandfather's grave when they hear that some of the graves in the cemetery have been desecrated and dug up. They then decide to visit their childhood home and pick up a strange hitchhiker on the way there. His erratic behaviour becomes more alarming when he cuts himself with a knife, then cuts Franklin's arm. They kick him out and go to refuel at a local gas station, which apparently doesn't have any gas. So they drive on to the house, intending to come back the following day. This all seems fairly innocuous in theory, but the oppressive heat in which they shot the film bleeds through to every frame. The actors constantly look sweaty and uncomfortable, everything is grimy and sticky, and the bizarre actions of the locals combined with the knowledge that any film called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is liable to end in a lot of violence keeps us on edge. There's not really much of a score in the film, just the occasional rumble, scratch or groan sound, and the sparse plot and naturalistic dialogue all ground this in an almost documentary-like sense of reality. We know that something awful is coming, but so far nothing seems all that dangerous, at least to the characters. All of that changes when two of the friends, Kirk and Pam, decide to go swimming and come across another house. While Pam waits on the swing chair outside, Kirk goes in to see if he can ask the residents for gas. It seems like nobody's at home, but then... This has got to be one of the all-time greatest deaths in horror cinema. It comes out of nowhere, there's no build-up or fanfare, no swell in the music telegraphing the impending violence, just a weird squealing sound. We're as curious to see what the hell is making that noise as Kirk is, and in a matter of seconds we see it's a person wearing a horrific mask made of skin, and he whacks Kirk with a hammer. Kirk spasms from the head injury and is dragged like a dead animal into the red room, and the door that we didn't even know was there is slammed shut. It's taken 35 minutes to get to our first death, and it's over so quickly, it's so brutal and is presented so matter-of-factly, and we know it's all going downhill from here, fast. The others are rapidly picked off.
Sally, I hear something. Stop! Stop!
Until only Sally remains, and she is chased, terrified by Leatherface with his chainsaw. Each time she thinks she's found someone to save her, they turn out to be in on it too. Sally ends up bound in the family's house for what has to be the single most disturbing dinner scene of all time. And here we see the true insanity of the movie rearing its head. Film critic Kim Newman noted that the Sawyer family perversely conformed to the archetypes of an old American sitcom. There's a father figure, the breadwinner, who has complete authority over the family unit, but in this instance he's an abusive cannibal. A submissive housewife who is here a huge lumbering man wearing different masks of human skin, unable to speak except in gibberish, and although he's a murderer, seems to take no joy from killing and is constantly freaking out. We have a rebellious manic teenager who's gleefully weird and jittery, constantly laughing and taunting his victim, and there's even a grandfather figure, but he's so old that even though he was apparently the best killer of the family at one point and possibly began their weird traditions, can't even swing a hammer. He suckles on Sally's blood like a baby, unable to talk or move much at all. Oh, and by the way, that's real blood. They had a contraption to squirt fake blood onto Sally's finger, but it wasn't working, so Gunnar Hansen, the actor playing Leatherface, actually slashed Marilyn Burns' finger open with a razor blade. A lot of the power of this film doesn't come from blood, of which there is actually surprisingly little, because Hooper somehow thought that he would be able to get a PG rating if he kept the gore to a minimum. But the oppressive atmosphere, the real animal bones and rotting flesh that they decorated the house with, endows the film with a sense of realism that grounds the raucous insanity of the Sawyer family and makes them all the more disturbing for it.
I was at the slaughterhouse.
I got an uncle that works at a slaughterhouse.
Hey, my brother worked there. My grandfather too. My family's always been in me.
The vagueness of meat is important to note. The family have long worked in the local slaughterhouse, killing animals with sledgehammers rather than with the more modern bolt guns, which the hitchhiker insists are inferior to the old way of doing things. In these lines, we can begin to unravel the Sawyer mentality. They represent the people left behind by the ceaseless march of technology and society. As the world around them became more modern, they found themselves to be increasingly irrelevant and unwelcome, and they respond to this by digging in their heels and becoming increasingly violent, isolated, and unwelcoming. It's hardly surprising then that when this group of young city slickers comes to town, or what passes for a town here, they take out their pent-up anger on them. The meat they're in isn't necessarily animal meat either. The father figure, who is actually the older brother of Leatherface in The Hitchhiker, sells barbecue at his gas station. It's another vague description, and we can infer what he really means by this. The meat that the family trades in is not animal, it's human. But to them, there seems to be no real difference between the two. They set their table and prepare to kill and eat the people they have captured. This frenzy of chaos and insanity peaks as they try to get Grandpa to kill Sally, and she manages to break free and throws herself through a window. She's chased by the hitchhiker and Leatherface, once again brandishing his infamous chainsaw. She eventually manages to escape the Sawyers by jumping onto the back of a pickup truck. She laughs maniacally as she is driven away from a furious Leatherface who's madly swinging his chainsaw around. We get the uneasy sense that she isn't really out of the woods though. Drenched in blood and cackling after all she's been through, seeing her friends and family die and being beaten, chased and tormented, her mind will probably never leave those musty rooms full of skulls and blood. The orange sun is tinging everything with a glow of hellfire, reminding us that Sally may have survived the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but she will never be the same again, and how much of her is left, we will never know. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is insane. Even with relatively little gore and not a single on-screen death by chainsaw, by the end credits we feel as though, like Sally, we have descended into the mouth of hell itself and come out the other side. The film was banned in several countries for years because of its oppressive atmosphere and relentless brutality. It just goes to show that mood can take you a long way, and the film's financial success and status as an unassailable classic of horror confirms that even without a lot of gore, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a masterpiece of sheer terror. A film that doesn't shy away from controversy or pull any punches with its spiral into lunacy. I think it's safe to say that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the best horror film ever made. Maybe.